if I have to think in something, maybe the topic of the composer for me is always a figure, a ghost around my thinkings. I don't know. I think, for example, for me, it's very particular the way the formation of kids at the schools. If you have an art class, a visual art class, you have to create, you have to paint, you have to put your hands on your colors, you know, or materials. The same with maths, or I don't know, a lot of disciplines. But in music in Chile, the model of music formation is always the reproduction. You know, it's obvious that it's true that you create when you make an interpretation, but it's a more abstract creativity. You know, if you make music, is very different. It's more, I don't know, it's another experience. And when you go to school, all the kids just play recorder, Star Wars, Titanic. I don't know, they don't make music. And the teachers are afraid to show how to make music, because in university they learned that make music is for composers, like a composer from the Olympus. You know, it's very schizophrenic figure, I think, because I don't know, the consequence of that, I think, is a bit sad. And I think that we have to recover that creation in music from the schools and university too, and always I'm not saying that all can be composers. For what? But all we have to have experience of creation, I think. That can be a good point, I think. Maybe Eileen?
I wasn't as no.
We have two microphones. So
I was, but it doesn't matter. I think that we in these 2 days we have addressed the topics of this conference: tendencies, conflict, and perspectives. Of course, in 2 days we don't have enough time to talk about another variables involved in this matter. But yeah, we've talked about being a worker, being a composer, being a researcher, being an artist in general. We have a lot of things to do in our country, starting with trying to develop our educational system to propose something. I don't know how, but there is an issue we have to be worried about. And talking about audience, it is the same time. This way that our musical field grown up under the shadow of Domingo Santa Cruz until today is our ghost. We have to break it in some way. I don't know how, but we have to manage our careers as composers with market, with audience, with many things, even if we are not prepared to do that. But we have to open the door and watch the street. What is happening there in the street with people who doesn't know about music, who doesn't know about contemporary or classical or whatever. So we have to deal with this. And I think it could be a really good idea to have the second conference to talk about, for example, being a worker, specifically being a worker, a composer and a worker or businessman or something like that, to address another branch. I don't know. The ideas could flow until now. I think in my personal case, I am quite fond and keen on these matters. And with this conference, I am really enthusiastic about what is going to happen with the Chilean community.
Maybe I can ask all of you now to remain a little in this topic, what Juan Carlos began also. What do you think that composers in Chile could do to help this situation that we have in the music pedagogy at schools? That is really critical. Do composers have something to help to do there? You would say no?
I think we are not doing anything so far. What we can do, I don't know. It is quite complicated to go and speak with. I think the people who prepare the programs and who develop the policies are not well prepared, or they just know about the education system in theoretical terms. We have a quite diverse country. It is not easy to talk about people from the north of Chile, the south of Chile, the center. Our heritage in all terms is quite different, and we have to manage it. I don't know how can we, as composers, help. The only thing I believe, there is a database on internet created by José Plustil with music by Chilean composers available online for everyone, especially for students. And I know some teachers are using it to teach some, to show the students how music by Chilean composers. But I think pedagogy schools should maybe, I don't know, invite composers to talk about this. Not to involve the composers in the process, but to talk about it. It could be a way to do it, to start at least.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about that question. I know two experiences that maybe it's good to say that. For example, Andrés Núñez is a young composer that I know that 3 or 4 years ago he won a project through the Consejo de la Cultura in a project of to experiment with toys, experiment creativity, musical creativity with kids at public schools. Maybe one can be an experience. And another is working with René Silva, another young composer, in a university that I can't give the name, but Albert Stolin. But in that university, they had a pedagogy in music with a mention, with a specialty in composition, but it's like a scholar, like a, I don't know, a scholar, like a primary school, I don't know, it's escolar composition, you know, composition for school. Yeah, school composition. And it's a beginning, I think. It's just, and René Silva is teacher and composer, so it's a good combination. And they have different workshops with different teachers, and always with the focus in the schools. And maybe it's a good experience.
Rodrigo Rubilar was also teaching at school.
He started with that project.
And there is Cristóbal de Ferrari, who also teaches at school. He was a studied composer. But I think those are, I don't know if René, you said?
René Silva, yes.
René Silva. Also, those are all private schools. Or
no. In a university, he is working with pedagogy students.
Okay, yeah. But this Cristóbal de Ferrari and Rodrigo Rubilar, they also teach at school. I mean, they are working directly to solve the problem as composers. I mean, they cannot solve the problem alone. It's a much bigger thing. But because when we complain that music at school, it's almost, I don't know who was, I think you were, said almost taking students, kids away from music or from contemporary music. Yeah? So composers are always looking for work, and that is something that a lot of them I know like to do. They could be more incorporated in these teaching experiences. But then I know that it's not the same. A composer is not really prepared to work with a group of 10-year-olds.
So the point is creating awareness for music. So it's interesting to see two contradictory tendencies. On the one side, and I'm talking of Austria, but I think there are similar developments, I guess, in Chile. You go to the street and you see every young person with his mobile hearing music. Music is available every time for very few money if you think of streaming and things like that. Yeah? So it's so present in the everyday life of people. And the people, the ordinary people who are not musicians, they use music as a kind of a way to steer their emotional self-management, you know. So it is present, but we are talking about a different kind of awareness, yeah. So we are talking also not just of this consumption aspect, but also a more a stronger awareness on the level of activation. You don't have to be a musician to be active, but to have an active approach. But it's a different aspect to be more active, involved in music. And composers, they can do several things if they are also, if they get also some competences from their education. But I think, I mean, if you are the type of composers who works also a little bit more on the level of improvisation, of try things out with a group, you can work with schools, and but it is an issue if the public is willing to pay for the work. And I know in German-speaking countries there are several composers that are invited in the school to do workshops. They get money for these, and but sometimes they are discussing, or they are skeptical about if it is sustainable, if it's just a workshop for 2 hours, or does it have effects on a long run? It's another question, but it is an issue to get money for this. And as I have heard from you, Chilean musicians are low paid if they are paid at all. And it must not be like that. It is a political decision not to pay, and this is a political issue to say there should be a political struggle and to remember the public and the government that they have a responsibility to remunerate the efforts of others, because it's okay.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that I totally agree with what you said about creating awareness of music, not just for listen music, but also to play or, like to experience music in. And I think that it is also this kind of sacred image of music that it's, if you're going to learn music, is to be a musician. It's kind of a dichotomical, it's really difficult in Chile to have someone that want to learn music just because, like as you learn biology or mathematics at school, in that kind of, it's not because all of us are going to be mathematicians in the future or scientific or whatever, but we have to learn all the disciplines at school in a basic level or whatever. But it's that thing that in music and in arts in general, it's not that present in the same way. And it's obviously on the with the passing of time, it's less and less present because they are also not rentable commercial arts, like commercial disciplines as the other ones. So why should I learn music, or why should I learn arts if it's not useful, or is like this idea of, or if I'm not going to be a musician in the future? So I think that's important. That it's an important topic to break down in a way the conception of what is music, why it's important, or why we should, all the kids must learn music. Not just because we want them to, all of them to be musicians in the future, but because it's, it's like another area of knowledge that it's.
I think normally if you ask people that are doing things that have nothing to do with music, the most of people would say they would like to play an instrument, to know, no? And
Yes.
Almost all people listen to music a lot, more than they do biology or.
Yes, yeah, but I think that it's also this idea of this sacred idea of the musician or of music, that that it's very easy for a teacher or for an adult to say to a children, you are bad at this. You sing out of tune or whatever, and then the kid make a decision. Okay, I'm just going to enjoy music listening, but I'm not able to sing or play or whatever. So I think that's, if with this kind of workshops that you were talking about, in a more free way of just improvising or just playing whatever you want freely, with no this conception of this is good, this is wrong, this is right, this is on tune, this is not. Just experience the music how it is. And I'm pointing the example with kids, but it can be done for adults as well. So this kind of workshop, I think not necessarily maybe at school, but also in other spaces, in neighborhoods or
Karaoke parties.
or in I don't know, in offices or different kind of. I don't know. I think it's something that it's need to desacralize the idea of music as something that you have to play it or do it perfectly. Because if you're not, you are wrong. You are out of tune. And you don't have the ability or the talent to do it. So, you like this.
I think that it's comparing other places where I've been, Germany and Austria. I think that in Chile we have this sacralized concept of music that you talk about much more. There is the categorization of things is much more important than the phenomenon alone. You are not allowed just to have fun singing. You have to do it like Santa Cruz.
That's the thing, I think. I think that we have to be conscious that this was a project. I mean, this is not like random or neutral. Like it was a project, and not in some sort of, I don't know, how do you say it, like conspiratory way. No, it's not that. It's like, it's this project of saying the musician has to be a professional. Amateur music making is bad, which was something said a lot in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and it was something that people like Pablo Garrido fought against and saying, no, amateur music was also good. People should be able to do music for their own good. But that was really fought against. And this was his idea. Then we need to create this very strange concept of the professional degree title for the musician in Chile in the 30s and 40s, which was the idea that as the government certificates that a doctor is a doctor and a lawyer is a lawyer and so on, it also should certificate who is a musician and who is not, who is a composer, who is a pianist. That was a political project, and a dancer and a painter and so on. And it worked, and it is ingrained in the society by now, 70, 80 years later, to the point that people do what you say, that amateur music is really something that is only, I think, growing a bit again now in popular music, like in rock bands and some other layers. But it's something that is completely absent from the idea of playing like classical instruments, or what we call like that, or from scores or whatever. And what I wanted to say in relation to that, second is that I remember Geoff Baker's book on the El Sistema, which maybe some of you have read, which discusses the El Sistema in Venezuela, and one of the big criticisms of the book is that El Sistema doesn't allow for creativity. And it criticizes that it was related to composers also, saying that's something that children don't do, like it's a professional thing too, and so on. And that the Chilean project, that is the one that inspired the Venezuelan one, the one in the 60s from Jorge Peña-Gen, the central part of the project was that children should be able to create their own works. to be performed, and the creativity side of the project was key, and was very, very heavily criticized by composers in the 60s in Chile, saying no, that's not good. That it doesn't make any sense that the children also write the pieces that they play. And now we have this more than 1,000 youth and children orchestras in Chile, but with no project of children, saying you can also write your music, and why don't you try new things? So I think from your question of what could composers do, I think being very conscious of those hierarchies and the history of the power of the hierarchies in Chile is very important.
One of the things that strikes me about this documentary that we saw throughout the conference, it was there are two main issues. One of them is put the interviewees in the street. That is a quite symbolic gesture. They are not in their office with these books and scores. They are outside. They are in the streets. And also we have these images of that are not explicitly connected, but they are obviously connected in a way with the discourses of the composers, that are these images of the street, images of street musicians, images of animals, and images of in a way the real country, the real life. So I wonder to what extent composers are actually in the streets, to what extent we as musicologists are actually in the street in a metaphoric way. I'm not saying that we have to play in the street really, or maybe yes, but not only that. I mean, how we as people who are related to music as composers or as researchers can be more connected with the daily life of people who are, as you said before, they are listening to music, they are enjoying music, and they have a life. A few days ago, we went to the British Library, and they had an exhibition about the recording music, the technologies of recording music. And one of the studies, a study that was carried out, mentioned that in the UK, an average people spend 13 years of his or her life listening to music. So 13 years. And probably if we run some experiments like some studies like that in Chile or in different countries, we are going to find similar results. So music has a significant importance for life of people. And I feel that sometimes our world, our scope of discussion is too far away from this kind of facts. So I just want to put an example to end my large speech. Some month ago in Edinburgh, where we live, we had a visit of Chilean guitarist, Felipe Celis, who is based in Salzburg, if I'm not wrong. And he played only Chilean music. And I was struck about that. And he said, very humble, he said, yeah, I wanted to play Chilean music, so I got in contact with Chilean composers, and I start asking, do you have a piece for guitar that I can play? So I think this kind of changes in the way which we think our participation in society, our participation in music, in the things that we want and we enjoy, it's quite significant in the changes. He's not saying, oh, I don't have a piece for guitar. He's not complaining. He's saying, okay, I can got in contact. Obviously, it's not always straightforward. Sometimes it's difficult, but it's just a small gesture. I think this conference is also a small gesture, in, more than small. I mean, it's probably a small contribution for a big problem, but it's a significant contribution in terms of let's do something. We find a problem, let's do something about that. And obviously we can find a lot of, we can criticize a lot of aspects and say, oh, this is wrong, or this is, to be very strict with our diagnostics. But at the end, we are doing something about that. And I think it's valuable.
In video yesterday, Luis Orlandini says the problem of the contemporary music is the connection with the society. This is very clear. But this composer, your students, teaching a new student. The autonomous music, never ending. For me, I think the academy in Chile needs open the windows, the doors, like the Vatican, like the Concilio Vaticano II. Yeah. This is the situation for me.
You can't say that something is not your cup of tea if you didn't taste it. Yeah, we have to show everything. I have some friends, composers, who really get angry when some performers don't play exactly what they composed, which is not my point of view. If bad players, students, want to play one of my pieces, go on. If they don't do it well, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for me, for the music. Taste it. Taste the music. Show the music. Play the music. Enjoy it. If you want, if you don't like it, throw it out. Doesn't matter. But we need to show the music, to keep the music going on every day, everywhere. And I think it could be a way to fix something, or I don't know, but keep the music running everywhere, and could be a good idea. Don't get angry, composers. Don't get angry if somebody don't play it well. Performers and not the computers. Computers play exactly what you want. Human being can't.
Don't get angry and be inclusive. It's another issue. I mean, I don't want to put it on a normative sense. I mean, you know, the composers are different persons with different character, different abilities. So it's okay if someone says, no, I want to perform only on special festivals with professional musicians. It's okay. But I know in Austria some composers that they go to local wineries and they make performance there, and the audience are usually from the region, no, not typical well-educated urban people. So, but when they have this kind of audience, they have to come in a conversation. No? And some of them are so successful because they have communicative competences, and they convey understanding about a music that is not so familiar for the audience, and they have no problem if the audience during the performance drinks some wine, eats something. Why not? Yeah. Exactly. Okay. So there is this option. The other example that I always have in mind, and have you ever heard of Mikis Theodorakis? Okay. Okay. He was educated in Conservatory of Paris, traditional musical composition. But he succeeded when he was thinking, I mean, he was communist, and he was thinking about how am I going to bring music to the people, but he was able to be successful in composing lyrics of a very, very high level, with a lot of lyrics work are written by Nobel laureates. So in Greece, ordinary people with very low education, they know Theodorakis and they know the lyrics. And here you find a mediation between high culture. Normally the people would never buy a book with lyrics and read, I don't know, Neruda or Elitis. But they know the things. So it was also a kind of impressive way how he could manage to make a bridge between high culture with a very difficult language, very metaphoric language, and the people. So there are creative ways. So it's a challenge to break your own conventions.
Yeah, about that, we have to remember that the Cueca Larga by Gustavo de Serra was premiered in a bar. It was a 20-minute cueca in a bar in Valparaiso. It's a really good example about it.
Yeah, related to that, I've met composers who say the public can do whatever they want. They are free, why not? And others who say, it was incredible, somebody did like... So there's everything.
That's the best part of being human. You can cough in a concert. It's okay. Don't do and don't do. Wow, no. It's okay. Open a candy or something. It is okay. That's why I go to a concert to listen everything. It's part of. The guy with the cold, in the middle of the audience, not in the aisle, just in the middle of the hall. 15 minutes. It's part of the experience. Oh yeah, I've opened the candy. I don't care about it. I get angry most of the time doing this. People open this, but doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's the way, the concert. Otherwise, stay at your home, listen to a CD or something.
We could go to another topic. I've tried in each presentation to bring the topics back to Chile, or to compare what these topics are in Chile and somewhere else. No? We of course the main topic was being a composer in Chile and being a composer somewhere else. We talked about a lot about the working conditions for composers in Chile. So maybe somebody would like to add something about that, something that is maybe special in Chile, or maybe it's an interesting aspect of somewhere else, how it is somewhere else, that we can maybe go in that direction, maybe in the aspects of copyrights and working conditions.
I'm the only composer, and you. Yeah, I think I already tell you what I think about it in my presentation. But yeah, we have to teach people that they have to pay for tickets. They have to, orchestras they have to pay for rental scores, and they have to buy scores. They don't have to make photocopies and that kind of stuff. Everybody should or must help in this matter. We have to create awareness about it. It is a good way to do it. I mean, it's a kind of being respectful with the job other person is doing. Everybody respect everybody in theoretical terms, but the composers have. It is not because I am, but we have a kind of a special treatment. Nobody cares about us. Everybody make photocopies. Nobody pay. That kind of simple things, I think, could be helpful.
It's cultural. No? It's not
It
personal.
is cultural, exactly. It's cultural.
But that remembers a little what you said just before, José Manuel, about this being a project, to political project, to separate really professional composers and amateurs. Maybe then what we need, or one thing that we could do, is another project to go in another direction. I think because there are some things that we as musicians can do, some other things that the academia can do, but it seems now that there's a lot of what politics can do about this.
Yeah, it's interesting because, for example, we were talking about this before. The project, at the end, the project you are presenting the idea of paying for the copyright, renting the scores and everything is a free market project, and because the sort of the composer project of the Chile 20th century was not a free market project, was a state-supported project. So the idea was the composer got a payment from being a professor in the university, so they could compose and the music could go free because they didn't need the money. So that was the basic. And since the 90s, that had changed. A lot of the composers are not working in universities, so they need to get money from somewhere. But they keep in the sort of the same system, both aesthetic in many ways, but also in the sort of criteria and ideas. Like, so there is a state funding from other ways and so on, but that old idea doesn't exist. So I think an interesting question is, if we go into a free market project, something that will happen is that a lot of the music will not be played. Because a lot of performers will say, I'm not going to play these pieces if I have to pay. Like, I paid because it's free, and this idea of I have a percentage of Chilean music and so on. So if we go a fully free market, I know a lot of the music won't be played. That's for certain. If you have to choose and then you have to pay,
it would be too
and then you have like, I don't know, 500 years of dead composers who you don't have to pay. So there is this entire issue, isn't it? Like, okay, so how do we deal with that change? Because it's an economic change, and it's also a generational change.
Let me give you a short answer. I don't agree with free market and Friedman and that kind of thing. But you're right. Yeah, you're right. Free market with huge regulation would be better. Yeah.
What it exists, I would say, in German-speaking countries is something between free market and state supporting. So, of course, all professional orchestras, musicians are obliged, and they do it. They buy the scores. They don't copy, and they have to. And there are clear sanctions. I mean, if you find a professional orchestra that they copy, you sue them. And yeah, so this is one thing. The other thing, prices are barriers, of course, because some people can afford it and some other people cannot afford it. But I think sometimes festivals, sometimes concert house, they try to differentiate their prices. So they offer different price levels and so on and so on. So it is a kind of mixture. But these organizations, they can differentiate their prices because they get also public funding. They don't have to pay everything just from the tickets. I mean, it doesn't work like that. Yeah, so it's a mixed system. So not just black and white, but a variation, a clever a smart combination. Different aspects.
No, only just to add to. Yeah, it's. I think it is interesting because, and also what you say, it's a mixture, but I think it is interesting because the concept in Chile was really, I don't know if black or white, but what was really on the one opposite. So there was no market involved in the composition in Chile between this sort of composition between 1940 and 1973. So yeah, so it is really, so going into the opposite way. I know for a lot of the older generation, still like, remembering those days and saying, oh, those were the great times, and why don't musicians don't do it anymore, and this sort of thing, like looking back at that state.
We had a question from Matthias yesterday, the pianist, sitting back there, about how to solve the problem that it is just more expensive and difficult for performers if they want to program Chilean music, for example, from living composers. So, and of course we didn't have an answer, but I thought, does this issue of classical music or mainly contemporary music being, that it is not possible to let it flow in the market. That was something that was already, how do you say this? There was a solution already for this, so nobody would argument against this. Is there anybody here from you that would say that that is not the way it should be, that we shouldn't have the government support contemporary music and classical music? Or we all agree that the market is not enough. It's something very paradoxical from our society, maybe, because afterwards our grandkids are not going to talk about, they're not going to be proud of maybe what the music that they listened to, they were from somewhere else, but they will be proud of the Chilean idols like Neruda or so. Those people, I know there are exceptions, but those are the people who build the little identity and little self-esteem that countries or nations have when they go outside, or am I missing the point? And the government has some responsibility to work on this and to support it.
Among cultural economists, even people who are for the free markets, I think there is a broad consensus about two issues in performing arts. One thing is what we call cost disease. The productivity in performing arts cannot be increased like in industry. When you learn to play Beethoven, it takes, say, 20 hours, and you cannot make it faster. But the salaries of the performers increase along the general productivity of the economy. So you have in the industry through the automatization and a high increase of the productivity and automatically an increase of the loans, the salaries. But what are you going to do with performing arts? There is a gap between productivity and salaries. So that's one argument why even conservative economists say the public should pay for performing arts. The other argument is that some parts of contemporary music or also lyrics, they don't have a great public. And they cannot have a great public because there are specific niches. Too complex, too abstract, and so on and so on. But still, if the public says, it's like lyrics, who buys lyrics, a book, yeah? Still, if the public says it's something valuable, this is an argument for the state to pay. This is the so-called market failure. So I think if you go to a conference with economists, cultural economists, I think 98% would agree with this. It's not an issue. Yeah? It's just the point is what kind of instruments or funding instruments are effective enough. Some instruments should go to the infrastructure. Other instruments should go to scholarship, to support production, the creative production. So this is an issue that usually you discuss in cultural policy. Of course, the amount is another issue, but the distribution, to find the right tools to support a sector.
I think I agree totally. Obviously, it's an agreement, as you say. But then there is the issue of aesthetics behind it, I think, too, because I think it's the same with musicology. So musicology obviously as an academic discipline that doesn't have any value probably for the market, except when there is an argument about who really wrote a song or something like that, which then musicologists get really well paid. We couldn't do what we do without the support. But then there is the issue of what kind of research and what kind of musics are being supported for being studied. And I think in composition in general is the same issue. Like should the state, which musics is the state supporting? Because that support allows the creation of certain music. And I mean, allows for someone to create music in a specific way. I mean, if we give that money to, a group of popular music rock band or whatever, and a punk band, and then we just say, okay, there you have the money, do whatever you want without thinking of for 5 years, 10 years. What would happen in 20 or 30 years to that type of music? And there will probably be a lot of change and things that would happen, and a lot of actually different musics work on that basis, or folk music, whatever. What could happen to that? So I think the aesthetic layer is something that we can agree in the formats, but then the problem is how to agree in what musics get the support and what music scenes. Yeah. I think that's.
May I answer just very short? Of course, there are disagreements and arguments about aesthetics, but still you can vary it. You can give you fund, for instance, festivals, so you have a curator or a team of curators that select, which is a specific aspect. You may have a jury, which is another forum, and sometimes you have also non-governmental organizations like MICA here. They fund also, and they have different logics. So, after all, we acknowledge there is a plurality of aesthetics, and actually the state should support several aspects. It's not a matter of our personal cup of tea, if we like it or not. So, and with a variety of instruments and a variety of decision committees or decision-making processes, you may come to a plural result.
Just being happy, buying stuff, having things, but not having time. And if we are not aware about it, we will still be talking about things and not spiritual or whatever you want to call it.
Okay, we did a revolution.
I think we have 10 minutes left, and if somebody would like to say something, please do it now, because at the end I would like to give a few minutes for everyone to say a few things So something about this topic, maybe, or yeah, please.
Just to complement what are all saying about your question if the state should support the contemporary compositions or composers. I think that we need to be we need to be careful, very careful in thinking that, yes, in this context, it feels that it's really urgent to support the composers. But in other contexts, in other conferences, or in other, it's very urgent to support actors or to support arts in general. So it's, I think, so I think it's important in terms of performing arts to be aware of what we have in common with the different disciplines or areas, or in composition, performers, actors, etc., etc., etc. What do we have in common, and what it's what we need as a solution? Because, for example, every time that the results of Fondart or Fondo de la Música are published, everyone claims about, but I am more important, or we as a guild, like, why this festival didn't get the support this year, but this other one get it. Like this kind of rivalry finally it ends in rivalities between different single groups, but I think it's important to think of what it's in common, what everyone has in common, to look for the solutions.
You say it's a political solution. Respect the composition, the academy. This problem is the same. Today, the art, the music, play, anything, any work is cultural industry. In this way, the support must be for the composition, composer, performance, producer, the space, etc.
Okay, so I would like to finish with a simple question, and I would love to hear a few words from each of you. And that is, what do you think should be the topic of our next conference? Maybe we can begin from that side, so that we go this way.
I'm so unaware about the situation of Chilean composers, so I can't say any significant thing on
it
this.
doesn't have to be about composers or composition or Chile, but you told me outside of the camera, I think, about this project of a colleague that is about
yes.
Immigration.
Yes, music and migration, and she's a friend of mine. She wants to start a research about this topic. What are the challenges and the strategies of performing artists who leave their country either forced because they are refugees or out of free will, and come to a different country, and they want to make their living out of their artistic work. For the exiles from Chile, it's an interesting topic, but yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that Eileen made some interesting points in terms of the working lives of musicians, and when we saw the statistics, the database, I wonder, wow, how all of these people manage to live abroad, and what what do they do, where do they work, and how's their life. I remember that some time ago we were planning to make a film, but finally we have to focus on the PhD, and then we postponed that project. But we were interested in trying to follow in a way to go to these people who are musicians who are living abroad, doing in some cases quite Chilean music in the traditional sense, playing certain genres or playing with certain instruments, and other people who are playing more neutral, if it is that, if you allow me to say that horrible expression to summarize. So I think that this could be an interesting topic, since we have.
Give us the title.
The working lives of musicians abroad.
Yeah. Do you know that we have a column?
23rd and 24th of November 2018.
Moment. We have a column and the SIMUC that is another part of what we are trying to do, some journalistic work, and we have a project that is musicology, musicological column also. But this one is opinion column, and it's about exactly what you said. We have already 4, 5 numbers, and they are written by Chilean musicians, Chilean performers who are living abroad, and they tell with their own words how their lives are, and of course related to music.
Sorry, can I just add something? Please, just a brief thing, that since you have this wonderful database, it would be great for next conference, since you're thinking about that, to see more of these people. I think we are a very small group, and for a first version is wonderful, but maybe for the second one it could be great to have a wider audience, especially considering the large number of musicians here or in Germany. So it would be great to hear the experience of performers that are, according to the database, 80%, around 80% of the people abroad. 60? Yeah, that's a huge number.
I don't know. I think you stole my idea. No, but if we can add something else, I think it's important also to, well, lots of ideas came out from this conference, these 2 days. Apart from the working lives of musicians, including composers, performers, and the big etc., it would be interesting also, I don't know, to add the what this kind of the definitions of how the definitions on identity, in a way that it's a very long and unfinished debate. But why is Chilean music, musicians, or like this kind of discussion as well, that maybe not the topic of the conference, but something that it's also why we should organize between us because we are Chilean, or
that is
or
a
we
question
should,
that
like,
we have been asked a lot, because we
I
carry
think
the
that's
name.
a topic also that it can be discussed in a broader sense, considering aesthetics or also the practical terms of fundings for doing this kind of events. So I think it's
We approach it a little in the film. This is there a Chilean identity in music, or is it possible to find it? But isn't your experience something that musicologists or musicians are worried about? This Chilean identity, to have one, or if it is one at all, or
I'm not the person who can ask. I think
He's our leader.
You are the one the expert on exotic stuff.
You don't have to answer if you don't want.
Okay, I have my subject for your
Please.
your
I
next
am
conference. Yeah, this is a good idea. No, I would like to apostar, to bet for experiences of musical creativity in schools, in education. I think that is a practical way to say to do something about from the. For example, in our country, Chile is wasting a lot of money in secondary education and university education. What's the level? Like high level? No, high education? No. University, no? University education? Yeah. For build public education for free for all the youngs. And it's okay, but I'm not agree with that because we have to start with the base. The real opportunities of social equality for social opportunities is on the first years. That's the point, the key point, and you can give tools to somebody for be another person. So from the music, maybe that's the good step. Okay.
Thank you very much.
You have to say something.
Please give us some ideas. I do not promise that we are going
I
to
like for my next topic is maybe the performance. The performance, I think, is the great thing. Why? The composition always see the score, but never see the performance, the ways of play, the passage, etc. Example, in an article in Revista Musical Chilena says Violeta Barra is a composer. She have a motive, phrases, etc. Violeta is composer like Beethoven. This is crazy. The performance of Violeta is forgotten. This for me is very important. Revalue the performance, the performers, the ways of play, the works. In this sense, the book is very important. Your book is great. The Kant, Immanuel Kant, is a philosophic way, very draconian. Is it draconian? Draconian way for the instrument. Like the instrument are no knowledge. It's only play. Kant says es un juego, dice Kant. It's a game between the reason and sense. This is today is very, very real in the academy. Performance study is the new way for the approach this space.
If I get it, then it would be how composers could connect with performers or with the performance of their pieces beyond their score.
In the formation, in the rehearsal, are very important moments for the student, for the performance professional. It's very short time for the interact between both.
Yeah, there's not much more I can say about this. I do think that so we tend to do this, with the musicologists to get together through associations of musicologists, and then we present a paper, and we say, oh, great, your paper was, blah, blah. And then composers and join, and then you do a festival, and you say, great work, and I think trying to like this sort of thing, even increasing it even more, so it's not a musicological conference, so a conference where we can join these different projects and make a discussion. I think that's a great opportunity. Doesn't happen very often in Chile. Going outside Chile to do it is also an opportunity to look it from a bit more distance, and in that sense, your input today has been, I think, great for all of us, because it's many times looking, your specific issue is really a bigger issue, and I think that's very important because we tend to not do that. So having a second conference that is focused on this sort of how do we relate, or how do we discuss with performers, with composers, and about a specific issue is interesting. And in that sense, I think immigration could be a good issue in the sense of both this association being one that focuses on Chilean musicians abroad. So there is that side of immigration. But there is also the big issue of immigration in Chile right now, which is Rodrigo Torres has just published an article on that, which is great. Santiago is now getting to, I think, 8% of immigrants from 2% 4 years ago. So migration is a huge issue, and if you go into the tube, there is musicians playing from all other Latin American countries every day. It has become a visible, audible thing. So it relates both things, what the SIMUC does and what is happening in Chile, which is a very, very interesting moment. So yeah, that's my.
Thank you.
Okay, I am the last one. I think I've got nothing to say. Yeah.
You're not allowed to stay
Yeah.
quiet.
No, I just want to agree with these ideas to talk about performers more than composers or musicologists. Let's say musicians, and how we deal with our daily life, being workers. And this issue, it is I didn't realize, but after you said that the Philharmonic Orchestra, more than half of the players are from Europe. The orchestra from Valdivia, there are another quantity of people. The Orquesta Marga Marga, not the half, but 30% of the players are from abroad as well. So it is a good idea how we deal with the immigration and how we deal with the immigration from us being abroad as well. Immigration, exactly. I think it could be a good idea to address this topic. And because I am the last one, I would say thank you very much to you, Javier, to the SIMUC, to the committee. We have done a really wonderful conversation, and the topics, everything have been really interesting. And thank you again.
Thank you all for coming and for participating. I know the day was long today. Thank you for your energy. Thank the SIMUC team that is here with us also, and thank our watchers over streaming. And I hope that we can meet again in the next conference. Somewhere, or through streaming again. So, thank you.